Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business of Business podcast. I'm Roy. This show covers a wide range of topics for all businesses, our entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, small businesses, as well as some larger corporations. And what we want to do is just not only put some ideas out there for thought, but we also want to bring you professionals that can help you solve those problems that you may have identified. So. Without further ado, today, we're blessed to have Vinnie Fisher. He is an entrepreneur and best-selling author, has over 20 years of experience in growing and scaling multiple eight-figure companies. His most recent mission is helping those businesses, e-commerce, tech, digital business owners improve their financial fluency and operate their accounting back office as a profit center. And I think, Vinnie can talk a little about this, but after he grew three businesses into the eight-figure range with fast growth, many customers, and low margins, he discovered the issue that he lacked the financial fluency and gave back much of his hard-earned money in cash waste and no margin. With no good solutions out there in the marketplace, Vinnie founded Fully Accountable, an outsourced full-service cutting-edge accounting firm that helps e-commerce and digital business owners through fractional CFO and accounting services. Vinnie, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us. This is such a great topic, and it's such a need that before we get into that, though, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know that you were awarded the Digital Marketer of the Year multiple times. So, you have a well-rounded background, in all aspects of business. And then also you've authored three best-selling books and guided Fully Accountable to the Inc. 5000 as one of the fastest growing companies in America twice. So, again, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got here.
First off, Roy, thanks for having me, and honored to be a guest on your program. I love what you guys are doing. I am through and through an entrepreneur. I have spent, even before my entire career, so to speak, my professional career, I've just always been, this is just the way my mind thinks. I see problems and I try to come up with solutions to those problems. So when you look at my kind of portfolio or resume, you see a guy that had some of his own problems, set out to solve those problems, and then tried to discover and did discover whether there was an audience greater than just me having that problem. And those would be my businesses. And so I'm thankful to that. I really am a marketer, right? That's, even though I'm a lawyer by trade and I did corporate acquisition work as a young professional. I love the law. I really cherish being a lawyer. You can't hire me as one, but I love the idea of it. I love what I do in it. I bring it into my businesses. But I've always seen problems, and thankfully, my mind's worked into a solution orientation, and it's how I've run my marketing. It's how I run the building of our businesses. And I know that's an unusual combination of marketer that runs business. Those usually don't go together. And I'm quite thankful that my emotional equivalent, my ability to be relationally connected to other people in our team is one of the best traits I bring to the table. So that's probably what's factored the best in my ability to maturely grow a larger organization is the depth and development of team.
Right. Yeah, and it's a subject for another day, but I think that you bring out a great point because I talk a lot about retention, and that's what I do in some consulting practice. But we have to market for that talent. We have to be good at building that relationship because we're only as good as the teams that we can build and surround ourselves with, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll tell you, the people don't realize that less than 7% of all companies do $1 million of annualized revenue.
Wow.
So the amount of energy it takes to create a value proposition to where you have enough customers buying and repeat buying your stuff to get to $1 million in revenue is its own issue. And so you have to establish, if you're one of those 7% of companies that actually have that revenue flow above? Well, there's an argument, a good one, that you have an established value proposition. Now you got to work on other things. Process and team are really the maturing things you have to work on, more than the idea of getting your offer to convert, because getting an offer to convert is the first phase of business. Building out the maturity of your company is truly the second and third phase of your business.
Right. And yeah, and that's so important because, a lot of people fall into a business, a trade, and they just start off and they really don't have a plan. And so that growth, well, it sounds awesome. It can be a real block for some people, knowing when to hire make those key hires, and what is that best path of growth. And I like what you said about the one thing that you learned was the no margin. And I think I've worked with some people that was in that growth period. They had a product and a price, but it was a losing price. And it wasn't like that was a market leader trying to get some other type of business. They didn't understand margin, unfortunately.
Yeah. You had a very nice intro of me. I thank you for that. And in there, you mentioned my Digital Marketer of the Year award. Well, I was walking on stage with my then business partner, and we were walking up to get the award. And we had actually won it 2 years in a row at this big event. It was kind of cool. And so we were coming up as getting all the accolades. And I leaned over to him and said, wouldn't it be interesting if this crowd knew that we were more profitable when we were half the size?
Right.
And so I would always be attracted to every day growing the gross revenue. And I never had a relationship to what we kept. Now, I know that sounds real basic, but I avoided the net profit or the net margin of the company because I was scared of terminology I didn't understand. Yeah. And this is a corporate lawyer who's trained in tax, who equally was scared of that information. And when I woke up, thankfully, and really my heart softened to that, this is my issue. How can I be mad at anyone else in our company if I'm not focused on the protection? Once that changed, it really changed the way we operated our company.
Right. Yeah, and the terminology, it's important because when people try to sell their business, a lot of times they will be like, oh, I've got a $10 million business. And, the first thing I say is that's awesome unless it takes you 12 million to run it or fulfill your product or your service. And so we have to be, very careful. In some businesses I've been involved in, some industries, that service creep, that you don't really realize that growing your staff, the impact that it has on that bottom line and what you get to, keep after the day is over with.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, for me, we had a really large health supplement company. We were doing almost $3.5 million a month in top line revenue, but we were keeping razor thin margins of around 8%, just enough to stock inventory, pay some bills, have basically barely anything to ourselves at all. And we were dumping it all back into growing the business because we wanted to sell it for some big exit. Right. During this wake up time, I realized that type of business that we built should have been profiting around 22% of a profit margin. So then all of a sudden, I started seeing that we were losing 14% on the bottom, not winning 8%. Exactly. And everything changed for me. So as soon as I saw the leaky bucket and I was able to see where it was leaking, I became a ferocious animal defending the 22%, and we got there. Yeah. And we were able to not only have distribution out of the company, but we ultimately sold it for a much better situation than we did when we were just running at 8% razor thin margins. Yeah.
Well, and I think you're lucky, not lucky, educated yourself to actually realize that, because it's an unfortunate fact, and I don't know what the numbers are anymore about small businesses not lasting, but we'll use a marketer for a good example. There are people who are aces at marketing, get you in front of the right people, get the right, get the flow into the pipeline, they could do all that, but they don't understand that back end. And at some point, if you don't make money or you don't make enough money to survive, you end up going out of business. And, that's what I see it way too often is somebody is very good at their trade, whether it's marketing, being a lawyer, plumbing, electrical, whatever it is. They're really good at that. They kind of fell into this thing, but now all of a sudden it's trying to understand the back end, or the other thing too is the accounting portion is not keeping good records. And now all of a sudden, today it's January 5, and so now all of a sudden it's scrambling around trying to put together the documentation, not having everything that you need in order to move on to that tax preparation, and you can lose a lot of money in that as well.
Yeah, it's funny, as you had made a mention to, like, businesses closing. Of that number, there are some statistical data from the Small Business Administration as to the close rate for 1 year, 2, 5.
Right.
What's amazing to me is that less than 6% of companies see their 10th anniversary in business.
Wow.
80% of companies will not see their 5th anniversary in business. Of all of those, that means that between the magic is getting to your 5th year.
Right.
But from 0 to 5 years, 4 out of 5 companies will run out of cash, and that's why they closed.
Right.
And the reason is this lacking any fiscal controls to where you're operating the business. And I think the real reason why we've grown and why we've built the business we've built is because I think the bigger problem is the mindset of the leader, that he or she is not building process in their company, that he or she didn't actually sign up to actually run a business. Right. He or she had a product or a service that worked for a couple of people and it started growing and it became this thing. I'm firmly convinced that most people did not sign up to operate a business, but the reality is something's got to change. Right. When your business starts to get bigger than you, if a new habit and a new structure doesn't kick in where you invest into the back end operations of your business, then you're going to be on this like hamster wheel, giving back way more money than is necessary. And with today's technology, that's unnecessary and no longer needed to be the way to run a business.
Right. Yeah, and even, I think the other component of your business is that fractional part, is that, as you grow the business, you may not think that you can afford that salary to go out, hire that CFO to be your guy full time. But, yep. But the solution that you provide is awesome because you can get that help at an earlier point than what you used to could. You had to wait. You either had to know somebody who could help you out and do it for cut rate, or you had to wait till you got to a point you could afford to put somebody on full time. And, that's kind of frightening as well. But with your service, I think that's the really cool part is you're able to put that expertise on at a much, much earlier time frame than we used to could, which is important.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I have a gift for everyone watching and listening, and it's at fullyaccountable.com/the business of business. And what you'll get there is our best-selling books, all yours. Just raise your hand and my team will send this stuff to you. But why I'm making reference to that is that one of the things that's critical for a business is the leader has to start thinking about investing in the maturity of their business. And the one part that I'd say is core is the brain, meaning whoever is the core leader and its team. But right. Everything else in today's technology is outsourceable. Right. We're one of those categories. So is other elements of service, maybe your supply chain. Like today's world, there are solutions to those problems in businesses, and more leaders that their mind gets locked into that, they don't have to be one of the tragic stories of running out of cash because it grew beyond their control. And so I'm thankful that we're on that wall. We're one of those categories on that wall. And there are other business process outsourcing categories. And our materials will help you really think about those things. And we want to give you every chance to succeed in each one of those categories.
Yeah, okay, and I appreciate that, and I know the listeners will as well. That's awesome awesome material, because we do need to think about that, especially if you're starting a business. If you set out to start the business, not even talking about the people just falling into one, but you've
Yep.
got to start thinking about this stuff day one, because what I've seen happen is it kind of creeps up on you to you get beyond the point of being able to hire help to come in to fix things, and you need to be very thoughtful about that from the beginning and set it out in a plan. Like, these are the
Absolutely.
time frames, and these are the revenue numbers that we need to get to in order to make this to continue to grow the business, where we can survive, not only survive, but we can profit from it as well.
Yeah.
Because we'll just kind of get into that a little, that a lot of times business owners are it's the other way around. Instead of the dog wagging the tail wags the dog. That low profitability, what I see is that tends to be when the dog starts wagging the tail, when we're not making enough money, we put in more effort, or if we're not taking care of the money that we make, we're not doing looking at our margins. Now all of a sudden we have to start working longer hours, harder, doing other things to try to generate more and more income at lower and lower margins. Is that kind of what y'all see as well?
Yeah, two things. In my world, where we live with high transactions in the digital world, we have a lot of transactions flowing through.
Right.
So if you're not paying attention to those items, because so many transactions are flowing through, where you can waste money in so many different channels, acquiring the customer can be way more expensive than it has to be.
Right.
If you have some controls in place, you could save some of that cash. But worse, what we notice about cash-strapped companies is the creativity of the executives go way down.
Yeah.
Because they're so worried about the dollars they don't have, that the ability to have good solutions into solving other problems in the business almost go away. It happened to me. Like, once I was able to free up cash flow in our health supplement company, I remember becoming more creative, because this like proverbial noose around my neck was taken off. And so that is one of the shames. There's already enough downward pressures that come on a professional. You always need to be available, and you always need to be right. Well, if you add like freaked out about your cash every hour of every day, it gets a lot less fun to run a business.
Yeah, and that creativity, we need to set our, there's a lot of research-based evidence that we need to set some time aside to be creative. But if, like you said, if we're worrying about how we're going to pay the light bill next month, we're not able to take that time out for ourselves and for our business, and can be very damaging.
It's happened to me multiple times, right? I mean, I know with firsthand, think about it. Like, if you're so anxious and worried about whether or not the right shoe's going to drop, or the furnace breaks at the right time,
Right.
Gosh, how could you not be filled with a level of stress that's going to be unproductive in your organization? So to me, as an organization starts to increase in revenue, it has to start maturing aspects of its company.
Right.
And one of those categories where we live, accounting and finance, is one of them. Where a business grows up, it can buy those things on a fractional basis and get the best bang for its buck. We call it time, money, and resources. Where can I win back a lot of time? Where can I spend a fraction of my money and get way more resources that I could otherwise buy with that same amount of money?
Yeah, because you've got people who already know the business, number one, and they will pay for themselves. They will help you save enough money, or help you to funnel or channel or tweak your pricing enough that they will pay for themselves. It's not going to be just a dead expense for sure.
Yeah, and if you like what you said there, when you think about the size, or it's funny. Our number one objection growing up as a business has always been, "Oh, I'd like to have that in-house."
Yeah.
Well, introduce the world's century pandemic. Well, that objection is gone.
Right.
We don't have this discussion in our sales team about being in-house. Well, what it's done is actually exposed a better issue. The better issue is, what's the better use of my dollar in return for my company?
Right.
Leaders are now saying, wait a minute, I can buy those resources in other is. All of a sudden, you can look in each category of your business, which is why I very much encourage you to dive into my book, The CEO's Mindset, because I break each department down of a company, and you can look. What a business should do first is look to outsource in the best use of your dollars. You can always insource later as you grow up.
Yeah. Well, and not only the use of dollars, but like you said, our time, because if you're a heck of a marketer, instead of taking the time to, fill out some spreadsheets or make sure you're keeping up receipts, is, find somebody that's good at that, and you can spend your time growing the business, through the marketing or whatever product or service that you deliver, or wherever your skill set lies as well. So you brought up you brought the pandemic up, so let's kind of think about that. What are some other things that you have seen that not only have changed because of that pandemic, but also, what are some changes that you see or some things to look for as we begin 2021?
When this all first started, I was following some executives who said, hey, it looks like we're going to accelerate 3 or 4 years of behavior. And interestingly, as this has dragged on, when you look at what's going on, I think we have accelerated somewhere north of 5 and maybe as much as 10 years, a decade of behavior. And so what does that mean? We're in the world I live, direct to consumer, e-commerce. We'd spend every dollar we could to get a consumer used to buying online. Well, now we've been forced to create a habit to buy online. Right. So what I see changing for e-commerce and high transaction businesses is that we have to switch our mind from just acquiring the customer to finding a profit margin in acquiring that customer. Because we don't have to beg he or she to buy online anymore. That's the real reality. So that's one thing that I think direct to consumer online is the new way business is going to be done for at least 25, if not 30% of buying behavior. By the way, before all this, it was margining around 10%. So we have tripled buying behavior online. That's huge, which means they are going to think, if you're a local retailer, you're going to have to very seriously think about your digital buying engagement behavior, 1. 2, if you're someone who has historically had all your talent sitting in your building, we run a hybrid model. We run a corporate office, as well as the vast majority of our staff sits in other places around the country. They're our full-time team, but we run a hybrid model where our homies work from home. Now, we've been doing that since day one, so we didn't skip a beat on that. But this reality that we are going to have an environment at a minimum of a hybrid environment as we figure out new ways to tolerate working from home, that and the upheaval to the way we think about running a direct-to-consumer business, both of those have been massively accelerated. And it's not this new normal. It's the reality of the way business was going to be done. It's just been massively accelerated.
Right. Yeah, and I think you make a good point that, I think we're here to stay with a lot of this digital purchasing, because the hardest part is getting people to do it for that first time. And I can use I'll use my parents as an example, is getting them to order groceries over the internet was a struggle and a challenge. But now that they've done it, for the last 6 or 8 months, it's like they will not go back to making that weekly trip to the grocery store. And then, same.
You've traded ignorance for unknown, for convenience. So when the habit supported convenience, all of the other arguments as to why not to do it are gone.
Exactly.
And so do I believe that because of this acceleration, it took something like that to massively change consumers' buying behavior? Yep. Do I think that we are not going back pre this? I also believe that too. Yeah. Do I think we'll level out somewhere between a buying behavior that looks and starts local and may end digital? I don't know where those numbers are going to level out, but I believe that even though experts are still guessing a little bit, at some point we're going to approach a 50% adoption rate to buying online behavior. And that's going to be a real thing.
Right, and I think a lot of brick and mortar companies have adopted or adapted to this, and they have the order online and pick up. I know that I was just had a few dollars left over in my the FSA account, and so instead of going up to the store and walking through the store trying to figure out what was available, I was able to go online. They had the local drugstore, the FSA store, ship part of it, pick part of it up. And again, that's for me, I feel like I'm pretty adapt to the digital, but that's going to be a new habit for me, is getting all that stuff online and just running by and letting them walk out and give it to me.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's funny is, you made mention that, people have adapted to some of that. I was just reading an article where one of these, big data companies was tracking the haves and have-nots. Yeah. Surprisingly, retail, people who do have an e-commerce presence have thrived. Shockingly, coming into this whole thing, more than 50% of active operating businesses in America didn't have a website.
Wow.
We have barely moved the needle on that statistic through all this process.
Oh, my word. I didn't know that.
So there's a have-not.
Yeah.
There's many retailers who are not taking advantage of the e-com part of their business. And it's them that are going to have to change the way they do business, or they're going to have to change the business they do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. Well, Vinnie, we appreciate you taking time out of your day to be with us. So tell me this, what is a tool, and it can be a tool or a habit, a ritual, what is something that you use every day in your daily life, either professional or personal, that you just don't think you could do without?
I use two things. I use a journal that literally allows me to organize my thoughts. And so my buddy, Tony Grebmeyer, built a journal called the Be Fulfilled Journal, and it's his version of it. There are other ones. I'm just mentioning his because of how I use it, but a journal that can allow, I have a lot of responsibilities, a lot of people on my team. I have kids, I have stuff. To be able to organize my thoughts, I'm not an organized person. I know I have a lot of responsibilities, but I'm not a generally organized person. But one of the places I needed to up level was organizing my thought. That's one thing I do. A second thing I do is I time chunk. Now, for high performers, you have to do this. But here's the tip. I specifically take my calendar and I set out not just blocks of time, but specific blocks of time. So if I were to grab my screen right now and show you my calendar, you'd see that today I would have woke up, had to get ready, prep time. People are like, what is that? That's still a specific thing I need to do. Right. After that, I would have, today it's Tuesday. I know whatever we air, I recognize that's not going to be all that. But I have a specific ritual, and each of those moments are blocked out. And only the time that's open is on purpose, allowing someone to last minute get on my schedule. But I think in order to be a high performer, you have to find a way to make time blocking an important part of your daily ritual.
No, that's a very good point. And, protect our time. It's one of the most valuable things that we have, is to be able to get things done and, be creative. It allows us to schedule that time for creativity, for thought, and, everything that we need to do to make our days more efficient, for sure.
I just get more done.
Yeah.
Because the world will take every second of your time if you leave your calendar open.
Right.
If you want to really check highly productive people, I'll tell you, people say they think time's the most valuable until you monitor what they do with their time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it can be an awakening just to write down all the things that you do during the day when you're not paying attention, and you'd be surprised. All right,
My
Vinnie.
friend Tony did this exercise with. Yeah, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What did Tony?
I was going to say, my friend Tony, that same guy, did this exercise with me about drainers and drivers. And what I would encourage everyone is to list out the things that are driving your time and what are the things that are draining your time. Yeah. And you'll be amazed if you watch your calendar days or start create 14 days, and the amount of leakiness in your time that needs to be protected, you'll see a mass uptick in peace and joy in the things you do. Yeah. And so I'm so thankful for that. It's really been a huge weapon that I know I would not want to do without.
Right. All right, Vinnie. Well, tell everybody how, first off, who is your client, and what can Fully Accountable do for them? And then, of course, how can they reach out and get a hold of your team?
Okay. So Fully Accountable, we are a fractional CFO and controller service. We provide a full service back end to e-commerce and digital companies doing $1 million in revenue a year and above. And so we work with high transaction businesses. We're the experts. It's the only category we work with. So all our people, that's all we do. We're the largest in the space at what we do. That's our client. Okay. During all this process, we wanted to make it simple for people to get in touch with us, regardless of where you are as a category. So we created We Care at fullyaccountable.com. You can go see our website. You can also take advantage of the free resource we gave you at fullyaccountable.com/the business of business. Please take advantage of those resources. Even if you aren't a great fit for us, we'll get you in the right hands and give you resources to succeed. Our mission is to help 10,000 businesses double their profit margin. And if we can do that by equipping you, great. If we can do that by being that for you, we'll do that as well.
Okay. Awesome. Well, again, Vinnie, thank you so much time. Y'all reach out, see how Vinnie and his team can help y'all be profitable in 2021. All right. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of the Business of Business podcast. Again, I'm Roy. You can find us at www.thebusinessofbusinesspodcast.com. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and this will be posted on YouTube as well. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of each other.